I'm going to use the advantage of being younger that allows me to know marketing much better to disrupt an industry that is extremely outdated and traditional. And that's how you win.
While most people chase the latest trends, others are able to create their own lane where no one else is competing.
All of these different experiences that you have allow you to shape yourself as an entrepreneur that then can exercise the act of entrepreneurship in a much more effective way.
Leaving his job at a huge investment management company before he even figured out what he'd build, Bernardo's journey has led him to carve his own space in the capital raising world.
The worst moments in my life served as a catalyst to get to the best moments in my life. I think you need to put yourself in such an uncomfortable position that you have no chance to fail whatsoever.
We sat down to unpack his story, the decisions he had to make, and the lessons he learned along the way.
The only option that you have is to make it work. And when you get to that position, you do make it work.
Yeah, man. I mean, we met in Lisbon a few months back at this point, introduced through our mutual friend Bruno. And to actually dig in and see what you've achieved so far at your age and everything you're looking to do beyond that has been really dope. And I think what stands out to me more than anything is that you're not the typical agency guy or online money guy. Like, you think for yourself. So yeah, man, absolute killer, and I'm sure you're going to be dropping a lot of value here.
Thank you and appreciate the invite.
But yeah, I mean, I really want to take you through your journey and kind of dig into how you got to where you are now. But before anything, for those that don't know you, who is Bernardo and what does he do?
Good question. So my name is Bernardo. I was born and bred in Portugal, as you know. I then left to study in the UK as I thought that was kind of the desired route, or the route that I wanted to go down on, and that will get me to the goals that I want to get to, which we'll get into in a second. Then started building an agency from there, eventually turned into a different business that is Avalanche Capital today. And I'm just, at the end of the day, a 25-year-old that's trying to figure out the same way that you probably are as well. And I'm just doing the best that I can to do so.
100%. And I think one thing that's really cool about having looked into you the past week is that I can see a very cool, way that one thing that you've done kind of built on top of the other.
Yeah.
And to really take you back to the start. So you're from Madeira, Portugal.
Yeah.
And you ended up coming to the UK. I think you started at work, if
That's
I'm not
right, yeah.
mistaken. So what is it that actually made you want to leave Portugal in the first place to come to the UK?
Because I always had this unsettling afterthought of wanting to do something for myself and put myself in the best position I can to succeed without not necessarily knowing what success was in the first place. So just that feeling of not being comfortable and wanting to strive for something else, although you don't know what that something else is. And everyone was going in this direction of, it probably the same happens in Brazil, right? But everyone was going in this direction of, I want to study in Lisbon, or I want to stay within Portugal, then, work for a big four here. And that's how how they define success. I figured very early on that I wanted to do the exact opposite. And the easiest and most effective way for me to do so was to go to the UK all by myself and to study here, because that would then put me in the best position if I one day wanted to come back to Portugal. And so that's what I did. I applied to a bunch of universities, including Warwick, which was the one that I wanted to get into because I didn't want to stay in London. I got in, and that was great. And off I went to the UK in September at 18, 17 years of age, without knowing anyone there, and just, started to make a living from that.
And figured it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And I think, again, digging into your story, I saw that in university was actually when you had your first kind of ventures that you were working on, right? So I think the events company came first, if I'm not mistaken.
That was the first business that we set up, yeah, the events company, Omnia.
So, I mean, I was telling you off air just before, but, I used to run a company, co-founded a company that events was one of the things we did, putting people into rooms, connecting people in general. So I'd love to know a bit about your experience there and if there's anything you actually learned from what you were doing during that time.
Sick in theory, shit in practice as a business to run. It looks awesome, but just the logistics is an absolute nightmare. But I think and we'll get into it, but from every different venture that I've had, you get to take different lessons from it that then allow you to build on to the next thing that you do. And Omnia allowed me to start understanding how it is to manage people, how it is to set up a business, how it is to manage cash flow, how to make customers happy, what people like, how to take in feedback at a very, very micro level, obviously, right? We did 3-4 events and then COVID struck. So unfortunately, it was a very short-lived business, but it allowed to build on some nice things and have some fun memories looking back now.
No, I couldn't agree more in terms of the lessons you take from
Yeah,
every venture, and also like events. In the end of the day, it's tough to actually make
tough
it.
market. Yeah,
But on the next venture you started, right? So before I found out it was while you were working, and we'll touch on the job as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
But VC backed startup,
yeah,
DeFi platform.
yeah.
What was that about? How did that happen?
So that was quite an interesting one. So, and building on this thing that we were speaking before about the idea of trying to find what success is and trying to find that North Star that you wanted to go for. I remember perfectly, like when I first got into uni, they have these things called the open days, which, yeah. And Goldman Sachs came once to our university, and I'll circle back to the question that you asked, but they came in, and I remember sitting down at this conference that they were setting up, and they give you these booklets and these notebooks. And I wrote the date of the day there, thinking that my definition of success at that point in time would be to work at Goldman Sachs. And then, in my first day at that job, I would look back and see that I was there like 5 years before in uni already, kind of visualizing that. So, and also another thing I want to talk about with you later on. But, anyways, then got into this kind of corporate job, which was Vanguard, which we'll speak about, and I very quickly figured that my way of achieving financial success and freedom and all of these things that we strive for as entrepreneurs and individuals was not through a corporate job. But at that point in time, what I figured is I want to try to build something that's probably going to take me 10 years to build, and which I'll see very little return on for those 10 years. But it's going to get me to a position in which I sell this and I make a lot of money, right? And just to clarify, I wasn't a majority shareholder of the company. We were three co-founders, two of which had started the business earlier than I did. I came in a bit later, and I just started helping them out with operations. But even how I came into this business was through almost doing cold outreach, right? So what I did is, and it's funny because I haven't told this story in years, so now I'm thinking about this and all of these memories are coming to life. But I was already living in London and I was living in Bloomsbury, and I figured, okay, so what I want to do is I want to work for this company that's going to be VC backed. We're going to raise capital from a bunch of firms, grow this to huge valuation. I'm going to get the 5% cut of it, and I'm going to be set for life. So what I did is, I don't know if you know what YC is, right? Y Combinator. They have the equivalent over here in the UK called Entrepreneur First, which is pretty much the same scheme. Went over to their website, and then I look at all of the companies that were being set up in the blockchain/crypto space. And I had just done a course on blockchain and crypto months before at Oxford. So like I was kind of in the mood of trying to find something within those lines. And I found this business called Fragment, which they just had gone through the Entrepreneur First Accelerator. You get like 300K for going through that accelerator and graduating. And I reached out to one of the founders that came from, I think, Manchester. Like he came down from Manchester and he met me at the British Library. And then I pitched him the idea of like working with him and like taking this on. They didn't even need anyone to help with ops, but I just kind of finessed my way into it and started helping with that. And that's how that journey came about and how we started doing that. Point at which now I forgot what the question was and rambled on a bit, but you get it.
I mean, the question itself was like, what was that experience like? And you've said how you got into it, but like,
Yeah.
so you're working at this startup while you're in your job as well, and we'll touch on the job. But what was that experience like, actually working at a firm that has raised, where you're coming in, there's co-founders already there, you're kind of seeing, I'm assuming, this space for the first time.
Mm.
Where was your mind at? How did you react to that? And more importantly, what did you learn from that?
Yeah, I'd say I had a quite short stint working on this, maybe 4 or 5 months, and I never got to be in a stage in which I was proactive. It was very much reactive because we were in the middle of raising another round by the time I had come in. We were going through the process of like there's a lot of bureaucracy even legally that I can't really remember now. That we had to go through. So like I was finding myself doing a lot of things and not really working towards my strengths. So it's not an experience that I look back on and I'm like this really allowed me to get, this thing that then unlocked something else in my life. The most valuable thing that I'd say I got from working there is not the fact that it was VC backed. It was not the fact that I understood how to raise money. It's not the fact that I got to speak with investors. It's the fact that it allowed me to understand what I do not want to do. And off of that, I can then understand what I want to do by exclusion, and I can then start working towards it. And so that was the point in time in which I figured, look, I'm going to probably spend like 10 years of my life for a chance of this working out and not making that much money. Like I'm probably better off just having a cash flow business. and that's how we got into marketing. And then we just kind of rolled on from there. But that's the best kind of thing that I've taken out from that experience for sure.
So you're saying the thing that you learned not to do was work in something that you'd have to spend all this time to
Yeah.
then work towards an exit.
Yeah, and a lot of the great decisions that I've made in my life have been from a negative catalyst and not from a positive one. And this was one of them. The one of starting Avalanche was another one as well. Like just figuring out like you, and this is also something I've said in my videos. And I think you need to put yourself in such an uncomfortable position that you have no chance to fail whatsoever. Like the only option that you have is to make it work. And when you get to that position, you do make it work. And I was having dinner with a friend of mine yesterday from university, which I hadn't seen in 2-3 years. And we were having this exact conversation. I was speaking to him about how his time in London is and you know, just how he's doing in general. And he was like, I don't want to do what I'm doing at the moment. And he's working a corporate job, but I also don't know what I want to do. I just know that I don't want to do this. And very much came quickly to the conclusion that he is not in a position in which he is uncomfortable to make a decision. He has a girlfriend, he has a place that he lives here, which is nice. So he's not in a position in which I had to go through, for example, which is I'm in the shitter, I need to leave, I need to go back home after having graduated and after having worked a job to now figure out my stuff, otherwise I'm a failure. Like that's the position I put myself in. And that's what I think you need to succeed as well.
I mean, I think you just described the region beta paradox that your friend is in, right? Essentially where things are bad, but they're not bad enough that you
make a
force
change,
yourself to change.
Yeah.
But they're bad enough that you don't feel comfortable
Yeah.
kind of within them. And again, we'll go into the mindset side of things, 'cause I think you have a lot to give there. But translating to corporate world, you were speaking about North Star and kind of knowing like, okay, this is what success looks like for me during your time in university. When you got to the corporate job you wanted, I mean, if you want to say where you were, etc.
Yeah, I was working at Vanguard, the asset management firm. I was working in their fund management division, but doing a lot of customer support, like as unglamorous as you can probably think of, right? As picking up the phone, like I forgot my password to my account or this and that, like very basic stuff. I mean, I was making like £5,000 a month, like when you're 20, 21 and like you just graduated out of university, like it's great. And I remember vividly having a conversation with my parents saying they could pay me double that I would not want to stay here. So money is not always a motivation. And like I'm driven not by the amount of money that I make or that I want to make or the financial outcome of it. Obviously motivates you to a certain extent, but it's more about the journey and more about exceeding yourself as an entrepreneur every single day. I think that's where the beauty of it comes, and not like I couldn't give two shits if I make 50 or 100 or 150. Like at the end of the day, it's the same thing, right? It's just like being an entrepreneur that has put themselves in a position in which they can do that. That's the beauty of the growth itself. It's not the revenue that you make.
So even while you were there working corporate, in your mind, you already saw yourself as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And from very, very, very early on in my life, I kind of had an idea that I was going to do something different. Like even before going to uni, people would ask me, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to be a CEO of a company. Like, what does that even mean? What's this kid saying, you know? But yeah, it ended up happening. And yeah, you just kind of, I guess you're born with this stuff to a certain extent. And you probably relate to the same thing. And I would ask you the question as well. Like, you know for a fact that you're not designed to work on a 9 to 5 or to do this kind of role. And like, even if you do not derive that much financial fulfillment from it, you're still better off than doing something for someone else.
No, for sure. And I think it goes back to, again, the purpose and the fulfillment and understanding really like what it is that makes you tick, that can actually unlock something within you. But yeah, I mean, as a whole, I mean, you described it, but your time at Vanguard, anything you learn, anything that you've gone on to use with you now in your day-to-day?
I would want to say yes, but I probably would say no to that question. I don't look back and have anything that I'd look fondly on in terms of memories. It was also a bit of a tumultuous period of my life due to personal reasons and kind of just, you know, jumping in between bros and like some other stuff that we can talk about as well. But it's not something I look back and I see that I benefited from it in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, it gave me the exposure to the financial industry, which is something that I need now. It did bring me some relationships, which I still use to this day. But beyond that, that was pretty much the extent of it. And it was quite a short stint. It was only maybe a year, a bit under a year, working for them. But yeah, not something that I'd go back to.
So, I mean, eventually that brought you to the point where you decided, okay, I'm done with Vanguard. I'm done with this project. I'm moving back home
Yeah.
with my parents. Did you know what you were going to do before you quit everything?
No, absolutely not. I had kind of an idea in the sense that as I told you before, I figured this route of going down the path of trying to build something that's going to make me millions, billions, whatever that is, in 10 years is probably not what I'm looking for, because I also want to derive some sort of enjoyment and, be able to do some nicer things. So I figured, okay, cash flow is probably the route to go down on. And then went back home, started diving deeper into some stuff, getting acquainted with marketing. And it was during the kind of the golden age of SMMA, like 2019, 2018. So, started doing some stuff there and eventually grew into what we do today. Yeah.
One of the things that I heard you say in one of your videos is choosing the right opportunity is what separates those who do well and those who take years to get it right.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, based on that, what was it that made you land on the agency model itself?
Just pure access to information. Like, it was either that or e-commerce, right? And I figured I'm probably good at sales. I enjoy selling stuff to people. Like, and it's something to this day I still tell some of my friends that ask me about what I do. It's not that I'm necessarily passionate about what I do at the moment, nor is it that I was passionate of what I was doing before. You're passionate about the game that you play. At the end of the day, entrepreneurship is the act of being an entrepreneur. And at the moment, I exercise that on Avalanche, right? Or in Avalanche. But that is not who I am. I am an entrepreneur. Maybe in 5 years, I'm going to be doing something completely different. And so to that point, kind of landed onto marketing through YouTube and all that sort of stuff. And then I think just started going through it. The hardest thing that you have to do is really to get started. And a lot of people say this, but it's so true. Because once you get started, you have a baseline that you go off of. And then you just have to put one step in front of the other. And you're going to make the mistakes, but you somewhat understand the structure, right? You understand that you're selling a service. And how do you sell a service? You need an offer, you need a problem, you need a target market, and you need to figure out a way to market your services and get clients on it. Sales is just a consequence of a good offer to the right market. And that's kind of how you start going through it. Like, the offer that we had a year ago is not the offer that we have today. The offer that I had 3 years ago is not the offer that we have today. And probably the offer that I'll have in a year is not going to be the same thing as it is today, because you keep priming that as you get to know your market better and you understand the right direction to go down on.
And having said that, how did you actually get started? Like, what was the offer you were doing at the start?
Yeah. So initially, and contrary to and everyone that's watching this, like the key of having a good offer is doing something that no one else is doing. Like, that's because you need to establish a monopoly, essentially, and just price your services however much you can. I did the exact opposite, because what you see is, and this was a train of thought, I remember perfectly just scrolling through YouTube, seeing a lot of people doing paid advertising for e-commerce businesses. And I figured, if everyone's doing this stuff is probably going to work. And you're grinning because you probably know who I saw it from.
And I've been there myself.
And you've been through yourself, right? Like, that's what everyone was doing. And so you think, yeah, this is the route that I should go down on. But then you figure out, like, this market is very saturated, because you probably have 1,000 people trying to sell the service to 100 people. So there's price competition, and whoever has the cheapest option is going to win. Conversation for another day. And so I started with that initially, figured, okay, I want to do paid advertising. Had I ever run an ad in my life? Absolutely not. So the first thing is for me to hire someone that does that. We did that. We signed one client for $500. Like, that was the first client that we signed. And then off of that, and then just started to pivot. And then I hired someone in Pakistan that was doing email marketing. We then figured, okay, like, e-commerce is not going to be the place to do it. I then tried to do something different. Eventually landed in the agency space. So doing this offer of scaling agencies for other agencies, client acquisition for other agencies, which was a bit of a paradox given that my own agency was struggling to acquire clients, but I was trying to tell other agencies how to do it. So we did that, and we did that for a good year. We then branched out and started offering the service to B2B and B2C companies. And even until today, which we help companies raise capital, and I'm sure we'll get more into that, the vehicle is always the same. Like, the conduit in which we deliver results has always been through email marketing. Like, that's the channel we use to deliver the results. And although we're doing the same thing always, we're connecting someone looking to buy or sell something with someone looking to buy something with someone looking to sell something. We just do it for a market that pays much more of a premium for it, because the ROI is higher. So the same business model that I used to run 3 years ago is still the one that I run to this day, but I can just charge much more because of the niche we're inserted in. So it's not so much what you sell, it's how you sell it and who you sell it to.
And honestly, when I was saying at the start that in hindsight, when you look through your journey, you can kind of see the evolution of how you use things from along the way to get
Yeah,
you to
yeah,
where you are now. That's kind of the prime example I was thinking about, because you're doing email marketing to help other companies get clients.
yeah,
And nowadays, you've translated that into a different market where the stakes are much bigger, the
yeah.
numbers are much bigger,
Mm-hmm.
and you're able to, in the end, have a much bigger impact rather than helping someone sign a 2K retainer to do
Yeah,
something. You're helping someone actually raise money to grow their company.
yeah,
And, even based on that, one thing, again, that I heard you say is the agency space is now inherently capped. So that means it's very difficult for you to be able to scale your own business there.
correct.
So, what does that actually mean to you?
Yeah. In terms of it being capped, I just think running an agency now is not running an agency like in 2018 or like it was in 2020, for example. It's very different because it's become ultimately, what is an agency? An agency is a service provider or a service-based business that is selling a service to a group of individuals or a company. So it's just an agency is just a nicer way of saying I've kind of created this service, I'm putting a company behind it, I'm going to sell to someone, right? Um, and I think to a certain extent, a lot of people have started doing that, given all of these, front runners like Heman or the other guys in the space that created this wave. That there's a lot of people trying to do the same thing because, and back to the e-commerce topic, like they see this is working, this is the wave that I'm going to jump on. And you look at this, and there's been a consistent trend over the last couple of years. First, it was paid ads for e-commerce. Then it was the growth partnering scheme. You remember this? You just do everything for one client or for one niche specifically. Then was coaching agencies. Now you hear a lot about AI implementation. Then there was UGC content, and like there's just these trends that people jump from one pond to the other. That you never really become good at what you do. And I think a lot of the agencies, and once again, I've coached agency owners. I still coach some agency owners to this day. Like the pain points are always the same, and to meet someone that is actually successful at delivering results is highly unlikely these days. And yet, I think it's a market that's inherently flawed as well, and as I said, capped, because ultimately there's a lot of people offering the same service to the same niche, which means that, as we were saying before, the price and the value that I derive from your service is quite low because there's a lot of supply in the market. And so I think that for you to win, you need to be able to be in a market of your own and have something that is completely different from what everyone else is doing.
A blue ocean strategy.
Yeah,
And, that kind of takes us well into Avalanche
yeah,
and everything you've done. Because I know it's changed over the years and, you've pivoted slightly.
yeah.
But from my understanding, the core's kind of been
The
the same
yeah.
throughout. But, to kind of introduce us into it, if you could dumb down the business model into like the simplest language you possibly could, what is it that you actually do?
We help businesses raise capital, startups and venture capital funds. That's it, as simple as it gets.
So when I first heard of you through Bruno and I was looking into what you did,
Yeah,
it's funny, right? Because what you just described is essentially like an age-old equation that people have been doing, normally
yeah,
through bigger corporations, but it's normally an industry that's been dominated by older people, right? People with lots of money and people who have been in the game for a long time.
yeah,
So, how was it that you, in your early 20s, looked at that and said, okay, this is what I'm going to be pivoting my
yeah.
agency into?
Because being that the environment and landscape you're in, and what you would consider to be a disadvantage ends up being your own advantage. Because if you look at a business wants to raise capital, and what I do is essentially called the placement firm. What does a placement firm do? Take for example an investment bank. They would take, let's say you want to raise capital for this podcast. You want to raise $1 million. You want to build out your own studio. You want to spend 500K to bring guests on, whatever that is. What you do, you speak to a bank, you speak to a placement agent, they'll connect you to some guys that they know, and once that's done because they only have access to their network. Is there a higher chance to convert? Yeah, because they know them personally, but that's it. Once they talk to those 5-10 people, that's it. What we've seen is that although that is a way of raising capital, there is also a universe of people out there that you do not have access to and that you do not know personally that invest into this kind of stuff, right? I may know 5 guys that invest into your podcast, but there's probably 10,000 investors out there that are deploying capital into podcasts that I simply do not know of. And so us being younger and having this approach allows you to be at the forefront of marketing and to use marketing as a mechanism to get in front of those people and have that targeted approach of using email. And I don't want to get technical and I don't want to get into it because I don't think it's the goal of this conversation as well, but allowing to use that conduit to get you in touch with the right people. And so you played at this disadvantage of initially saying, look, this is an industry dominated by older people that have access to their own networks, to then saying, look, I'm going to use the advantage of being younger that allows me to know marketing much better to disrupt an industry that is extremely outdated and traditional. And that's how you win, right? Because you do something that goes against the wave of the industry in this case.
And I think that's sick because just before you were mentioning the different waves that people jump on,
Yeah.
right? And how the SMMA model and the agency model kind of changed over time. But what you just described now is essentially something that you don't need to be the first mover to actually have success with. Because all these other trends, like if you're in early, you can grow with it. But if you're in late, you're catching the back end where it's super competitive and everyone's doing the same thing. But you've basically crafted your own space. And again, like I've never seen anyone do this. And I know you've taught other people how to do it and there are others doing it. But it's not a mass market thing that's out there.
Yeah, it's not, but the market in itself is huge. Contrary to what many people think, because if you think about it, everyone needs capital one way or the other. And raising capital is not only selling a percentage of your company. Like you can raise that. There's different ways that you can go about raising capital. And everyone, if they have the chance to be given more money to build something, they can use that as leverage that will then bring them more money in return. And that's kind of the hypothesis that we figured out.
So, I mean, even on that, because before this conversation, I was thinking maybe the background you had at Vanguard, maybe the other projects you had worked on, that could have been kind of like the foundation that not taught you, but inspired you to do what you're doing
It
now.
parlays into it, right? I mean, not to say that the time that I had at Vanguard was completely inconsequential to what I do now, because that's not true. Back to the thing that we were speaking initially, like all of these different experiences that you have allow you to shape yourself as an entrepreneur that then can exercise the act of entrepreneurship, in a much more effective way.
Would you say that or the agency background or a mix of both was it that actually led you to this?
It was a mix of both, right? Because it makes me and the business when I speak as me and the business as an extension, right? But I'm at the forefront of the business. But having that knowledge on both ends, so understanding the financial space quite well and being something that I like, and then understanding marketing and understanding that marketing is the act of connecting people, that allows you to create this offer and gives you that unique positioning. Because I'm not competing with banks at the end of the day, right? It's a completely different market. And I'm also not competing with marketing agencies because I'm not doing lead generation. So it's a mixture of both, and that allows you to penetrate the market uniquely at the end of the day.
As you were growing the company, right, and you were building the different departments, how was it that you approached actual team building and knowing like who you needed in place to do what things and how things should look like, and even how your approach towards this business should be? Like, how did you approach figuring that out for yourself?
Yeah. That wasn't necessarily from this iteration of the business, because a lot of the infrastructure that I had on the marketing business, which was Avalanche as well, which is called Avalanche Consulting and not Capital, translated into this. So a lot of that I brought into this. But the way that you should go about doing any sort of hiring is you should look at two things. First of which, how much does a specific task consume of your time? And then secondly, how important is that task to the business and how much does it involve you? There's certain things that I'm just not willing to outsource, although they take a lot of my time. Sales is one of them, because it's highly technical, it highly influences the business, and I need to be there to also be able to vet the client and understand if it's something that I want to do. On the other side, for example, sending out emails or doing client onboardings or coming to client stand-ups and all that sort of stuff. Those are things that take up a lot of my time and that I can outsource. So those are probably the first things that I'm going to outsource. So to answer your question, how did I go about doing that? When I first started the agency, and I told you this, even before and having not run a single ad, the first thing that I did was to find someone that had run ads before and that knew how to do it. But I had a bad experience there because then that guy ended up leaving and I didn't know how to run ads. So now what I've always kind of thought myself is I'm going to learn how to do everything within the business, because then that also allows me to hire that also allows me to hire a better person. And then off of that, I kind of understand and have a grasp of what they're being measured on and what KPIs to look for and so on and so forth. So always look at what is the lowest leverage task that takes up the majority of your time and then hire based on that.
What did the business kind of look like in its different evolutions along the way?
Yeah, so initially, and during a very short time, it was the paid ads for e-commerce businesses, maybe one or two clients. Like I wouldn't even call a business at that stage. Then moved into email marketing, and that's where I kind of, broke that mythical 10K a month barrier, and that was very much focused on helping other marketing agencies scale up. Then we shifted that to go beyond marketing agencies and to encompass other businesses, B2B and BTC, and B2B and B2C by nature. And then we eventually moved on to doing this work that we do now, which is helping venture capital funds and the startups with capital raising.
And even within the capital raising space, like, has it changed over time, or have you vaguely done the same thing throughout?
It has changed a bit, and that's also according to kind of the economical landscape and what investors are looking for ultimately. Like if that's the direction we want to go down on, we can speak about that as well. But different investors want different kinds of things, right? And at this point in time, public markets are obviously outperforming private markets, so there's less people looking into venture and more people looking into hedge funds, real estate funds. So it does change a bit. Like, and I think that's also the beauty of being an entrepreneur, which is to stay dynamic as you go through the motions and as you figure out, like, I need to adapt to the market. If you stay within the same position, especially during this kind of period of our lives where things are just so fast paced, like every day there's something new coming up, that you need to adapt and you need to stay at the forefront of innovation to succeed.
And would you say what you do now is what you see being, and I want to ask where you want to take the company, but
Yeah.
is it almost like a vaguely complete iteration of where you'd like to take the company? Or do you still want to grow like different branches, take it in a different direction, like see yourself hitting a certain point to then do something else within it?
There's no point specifically I want to get to. There's not in point being financially measured, right? There's not this number I want to get to. There's this idea of where I want to take the business in terms of want to probably make it more platform based, more software based. I want to be able to make this accessible to more people. I think fundraising is a very gated space. It's very difficult to raise capital, and raising capital itself is a full-time job. I don't know if you have ever gone through the motions, but from pitching to preparing the business to be investment ready to getting in touch with the investors, it's a full-time job. And it unfortunately preys on a lot of the kind of early stage founders, because you're trying to build a business, but then you need money to build that business. And if you're spending time focusing on raising capital, how much time do you spend on actually deploying that capital and scaling out the business? So I want to make it accessible to more people, and I want to democratize it in a certain way. And that's also the reason behind trying to make it a platform now and thinking about it in the future. Then I'm not sure what I want to do. I've always said, and my goal of getting into entrepreneurship was, I've always seen this as a vehicle, right? As I told you before, like this is I'm being an entrepreneur now through Avalanche, but this is not who I am as a business owner. And I probably want to be able to play more to my passions later on, which if you ask me what they are, I don't know what to tell you at this specific moment. So I don't know what the answer is, but probably I would want to get into some other stuff as well. And I think, yeah, just become more versatile as an entrepreneur and grow.
Yeah, man. I mean, you've used the word vehicle a couple times
Yeah.
now, and I've told this to a lot of friends, but a saying I was once told by a mentor that I value a lot is, I was basically telling him, I've done all this work internally, I'm ready, I just need to find the right vehicle. And
Yeah.
he told me, you are the vehicle.
You are the vehicle. Yeah, exactly. He's right.
And I think everything you're saying about being the entrepreneur and being able to take yourself through the journey and having, like, yes, the company is what you're doing, but ultimately it's an extension of who you are at this current point in time.
Yeah, and it's also the biggest problem that I'm trying to solve, because I think a flaw that entrepreneurs have, and it's very difficult to circumvent, and I'm glad that I have the awareness to recognize that, which I don't think many people do, is that you are not defined by how much you make, and you're not defined by the outcome of what you do. Obviously, your success is measured in some form by that, but I think ultimately it's what you take from it. I know that if this business went to zero, or if the next business that I have goes to zero, like all that I've learned now is invaluable compared to what I would have learned otherwise. and like I'm giving away a lot of my life and a lot of my time in lieu of this, but is also allowing me to, refine certain skill sets and learn new things that I can then utilize elsewhere. And I think that's the real beauty of it. And I think unfortunately, like, we live in a very materialistic world, and like I'm not going to be the kind of guy that to say that I don't like these nice things. I like nice watches. I like these nice things, but ultimately, I think it's the transformation that matters the most. And a lot of people say that it's about the journey, and obviously, we're driven by money at the end of the day, and you're driven by success. But I'm trying to focus on enjoying more the journey than the outcome itself, because I know I'll get there, and you probably know yourself that you'll get there. It might take you 5 years, might take you 10 years, might take you 10 months, but you'll get there. It's just looking back and figuring out, I'm not happy now because I've gotten to this position. What made me happy was actually figuring out all of these problems, and going through the motions, and really just, evolving as an entrepreneur. That's where the happiness comes from.
The act and what it took. No,
Yeah.
100%. And even like a question based on that, before you transitioned into the fundraising space, when you were doing email marketing, I'm assuming you were charging retainers around 2K, give or take,
Yeah.
1K either way. Now you charge multiple 5 figures
Yeah.
up front plus a commission.
Yeah.
How was the mental shift for you to be able to go from, having the confidence to pitch 2K versus having the confidence to pitch 25K up front?
It was not that difficult, in full transparency. Like, I've always figured that and this is one of the things I learned in university, funnily enough, as there's something called the shareholder theory, which is, you as a business owner, you need to maximize the value that you make for your shareholders. And so as that, it means that I need to maximize the amount of revenue that a business makes, which in turn means that I need to maximize how much I charge per every client that I work with. So I would always go into a call with the mindset, I need to be able to get as much as I possibly can from this client. And so I'm now just doing the same thing through a different vehicle, essentially, that is allowing me to charge more. But it doesn't move the needle that much. It's not in the sense like, oh, okay, close this guy for 50K or 100K or 20K. Like, it's not about that. It's about engaging with the client and making it successful at the end of the day, regardless of how much you charge.
Did you ever feel any kind of imposter syndrome at all going into the space you're now in?
Yeah, and I still feel a lot of it at the moment. And I think comparison is the thief of joy. And the same way that there are probably people that will listen to this podcast and think, like, I would want to be in your shoes. Like, even at the position I'm in now, like, I still look at other people and I'm like, look, I'm doing this, but then there's this guy who's exactly my age, and one of them very known, which we've spoken about, and he's a million steps ahead. But like me, it doesn't bring me anything to compare myself with those people. Like, I'm on my own journey, and the only competition that I have is myself. And knowing that every day I do something better, and that's going to get me closer to my goal. That's it. But it's difficult. One thing is to say it, the other thing is to apply it. But that is the imposter syndrome that we all go through.
No, for sure. And at the end of the day, it's like you can say all the theory to yourself, but emotion is what you feel.
Yeah.
Right? And being able to actually truly believe it to the point where you feel in accordance to that is a different thing to just knowing the best thing to say. And the cliche comparison is the thief of joy, right? I mean, do you want to clickbait the podcast a little bit?
Go for it. Yeah.
What are some of the biggest wins you've had? Any things you're able to share? Not necessarily names, but like, I don't know, numbers, clients.
I mean, at the moment we're raising for all of our clients just under 3 billion, so that's a lot of money. That we're going after. I mean, done multiple months over 6 figures, but none of that. It's not something that I would shout from the rooftops. It's not something like. And you see a lot of people, and this is also what makes me somewhat sad. Like, the direction these industries go in is just, I'm this age and I'm making this amount of money, and like the whole obsession with getting here is becoming that person. It is not what this is about, which is unfortunate. And it takes away so much from what entrepreneurship is, and it creates the wrong expectations. It creates the wrong way of acting, because people are just gonna, try to make something work to make as much money as possible. And longevity is everything in business. Like, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And yeah.
Raising. I've heard you describe raising as a to Z process. Some people might look at it as this, huge daunting task, but from my understanding, you've kind of broken it down into steps to get there.
Yeah.
Vaguely, if you're able to give like a bird's eye view, what does that process kind of look like?
Yeah. So very simply put, we've broken this down into 3 different steps. So fundraising starts by having the right business to pitch, right? Obviously, let's take that as as a given, right? Sorry, you have, let's say, good business model, good team, all of that is a given. Then the first thing that you need to do, and that we do, is that we look at all of the investment materials that have been collated by their team. Pitch decks, data rooms, financial models, projections, all of that, and we make sure that's congruent to the raises that we have done. So that's a given. Why do we do that? Because you don't want to add any friction in the due diligence process. Second thing that you need to focus on is the introductions. So how do you introduce someone looking to raise capital with someone looking to deploy capital? Two ways. Warm introductions. I know someone that wants to fund your podcast. I can introduce you directly. And then second of which, how can I get you in touch with people that I don't know personally, but that still have a mandate to deploy capital or a history of investing in podcasts? That's the second thing. And that's where marketing comes in. And then lastly is just assisting with the conversion. So how do you convert the people that have already shown interest? Those are the three steps. And if you look at it as marketing at the end of the day, make sure you have the right offer to present to the right audience, you connect to the right buyers, and then you help convert the sale. You're just playing at a completely different level. Instead of selling a marketing service for 10K, you're selling the ability to fund a company for 100 million. But it's the exact same thing.
And in the end of the day, it's what you said. You're playing the same game, but at different stakes, which brings you different rewards and allows you to really, like, I guess, take the steps towards where you want to get to much faster than otherwise.
Yeah.
I've heard you speak about wanting to make a 9-figure exit. I've heard you speak about wanting to sell the business, but like, what does the end goal of Avalanche look like for you? Like, where are you trying to take it?
As I said, I would want to first democratize this, so make this accessible to everyone. I would probably have this offer and this business split into two. One approach that's much more tailored, so geared towards businesses that are looking to raise hundreds of millions and that probably need a more Swiss knife approach. And then I would have this for people that just want to be able to use that infrastructure and those marketing capabilities for themselves, even if they're raising 100K, for example. Then I would want to exit this at some point, and I know we will. And at that stage, probably start investing into other businesses. I think that's probably one of the sickest concepts. Just you and your friends, you listen to people pitch you every single day, like understand how to drive change in an industry and go off of that. That's what I would want to do. I think that's probably one of the best businesses to have in the world. You gain exposure to different businesses, to different industries, and I think that's sick. That's where I want to be in.
Incubator style,
yeah, very much so. And like I'm at the right place because if you look at it, like I'm connected with investors, I'm connected with real estate funds, so like I'm pitched every single day in every single direction. Last year alone, I took, I think, were 927 calls with potential clients and prospects. So I've heard a lot about the industry. I know a lot of people, and so this network in itself is something that it's not monetized at the moment. I mean, it is to a certain extent, but it's so valuable. And we were talking about this off camera, like even with your podcast, the networks that you have now, the people that you speak to, the access that you have, it's stuff that you're not monetizing now, right? Like this relationship that we have now, this is the value that we're deriving from it now. But maybe in 10 years, you've grown this podcast to be, and you will, to one of the most successful podcasts in the world. I'm doing something completely different. We get to connect and we get to work on something that is extremely different to what we're doing at the moment. And we derive value from that in that sense. So that's one of the biggest benefits of doing this.
In terms of democratizing information that you mentioned, is it broker dealer? The
Deal Broker is the name of what we were trying to do. Yeah. So with this thing that we were speaking about initially, and the journey that we've had so far of pivoting from a ads agency to an email marketing agency to now a placement firm, like we've figured exactly the problem that we went through initially, which is that the marketing space as is provides the right conduit for businesses to get where they want to get to, is just utilized in the wrong manner. And there's a lot of agency owners that resonate with the position that we are in. And at our peak during those marketing days, call it pre-Avalanche Capital, we were making maybe 50, 70K a month, like at its best month. And that's something that we were capped. Like we could not go further than that. We could not, like, we had case studies in every single industry you can think of. We were sending maybe 1 million emails a month, a lot of volume behind this stuff. And it was like, to scale through that, it was just pure brute force. And we figured, like, there is a cap in this market. Like, we cannot take this business to 5-10 million a year. You just simply cannot do it. And this is something that resonates with a lot of agency owners. And so what we're doing now is we're providing almost kind of a white glove service to help these agency owners to pivot into something like this. And it doesn't necessarily need to be capital raising, but it's just being clever enough to use that vehicle to allow you to get to this position. Not the position that I am in financially, but the position in which you provide a service to a market that actually needs you.
And do you think getting into that position requires some kind of experience or background in an industry that you'd then be going into?
Not at all. At the end of the day, I didn't know anything about marketing when I got into this space, and I still managed to get here relatively quickly. So it's not, as we said, the hardest thing is really to get started. And once you figure out why this doesn't work or why this works, you start putting one foot in front of the other, and you get a better sense of direction, and you have that visibility on how do you get to this position, and you solve each problem as they come, right? Initially, the problem that you have is maybe, oh, I can only take 5 clients a month. Okay, we get past that. The next one is I don't have enough sales volume to scale up. Okay, how do I fix that? The next one is I'm having my time is to consume on sales. How do I outsource that? So all of these small problems that you fix allow you in kind of the bigger picture to get closer to that goal that you've set out to achieve.
Do you think there's a particular type of person or any particular type of traits within people that would allow them to succeed with a type of business model that you're running?
I think it's mostly the desire to make something out of nothing and being uncomfortable with the position that you're in, regardless of where you're at. Those are the most important traits. And obviously, to understand that for you to maximize the value that you provide and in turn maximize the revenue that your business accrues, you need to delay happiness as much as possible. And just kind of push that ball forward as much as you can, and put your head down and accept that for a specific period of time, which will probably be a long time, you will need to forego a lot of things in lieu of the business. Like, I'll take my first week off fully next month for the first time in 3 years. Like, I have not taken a single day off in 3 years. So it's that, and it's something that I've given up. You probably have been through a similar journey, but it is what you have to do, right? You need to be at a competitive advantage towards your competition at the end of the day, and time is the most valuable thing.
If you don't make sacrifices, your dream is the sacrifice. These types of sayings.
Well
right?
said, yeah.
On that, to shift into mindset
Yeah.
for a bit. In terms of your decision-making process, right? So whether it was when you left Vanguard, with any of your other ventures to start or to finish, the different pivots you've had along the way with the agency, was there any common decision-making process that you took to make the decisions that you did?
Tough to say. I'd say in every instance in which I made that decision, I was forced to make that decision. And putting myself once again in a situation that was so unbearable and so uncomfortable that I had to change. I wouldn't say there was a specific way in which I behaved. I could say that it was obviously just a willingness to take a shot in the dark in every single instance, like not knowing what's going to happen in 1 month. 1 month, and I still don't know what my life will be in 1 month, right? But it's just being able to be okay with that idea and knowing that I have to sacrifice this. That's fine, and knowing deep down, and this is not something I say for the cameras, and this is something that I would tell you off camera as much as I would on camera, is having that belief that things will work out. And I think it's a commonality between entrepreneurs. You don't know how you're going to get there. You just know that you're going to get there. And then it's just believing in yourself, believing in the team that you have around you, which is extremely important, and being surrounded by the right people that allow you to get there, and just leverage that kind of workforce to get you as close to your goal and the outcome that you've set out as possible.
I mean, even off the cuff, what you just described, like, I named the podcast Delusion by Design.
Yeah.
Delusion, this concept of believing in something even if there's nothing to show you or to tell you that is possible. What does that concept look like for you, and like how has it played a role in your life?
Yeah, it's true. You have to be absolutely delusional to take some of these decisions, right? And I remember perfectly when I left the UK to go back to Portugal. So not something we touched on, but I got to so I left Vanguard and I had this house rented for a year in Notting Hill, which was £2,000. And at the moment I was working in this the DeFi platform that we were working for, and it came to the position in which I had 3 months worth of rent left to pay, and I had no job and I had no income to pay for that. And I was going through a tough breakup. I was, doing a lot of things that I shouldn't be doing, like going out a lot, smoking weed, like all of that sort of crap. And I just figured I don't want this to myself, and I have to be delusional to the sense that after living 6 years in the UK, having all of my friends here, having built a life somewhat here, to go back and start from zero, live with your parents again, and just knowing like in this, like I have to make it work, otherwise I'm screwed. And it is the delusional, it is that delusional aspect that allows you to succeed, because I could have taken the easy route and yeah, okay, this didn't work, I'll find another job quickly, I'll figure out a way to pay this, and maybe in 3 years time I'm still going to be in the same position, still living paycheck to paycheck, but I'm going to have that comfort. And it's that uncomfortable nature that allows you to succeed. Is being delusional enough to understand that you can do whatever you set your mind to that allows you to succeed.
Would you say you're someone who was naturally more comfortable with discomfort, or did you have to build that up over time?
For sure, but also I'm not striving for comfort. It's not something that I optimize for at this point in time. It's not something that, how can I get myself in a position in which I work as little as possible and that still allows me to make money. Like that's, I'm 24. Like that's not, I should not be thinking about that at this specific point in time. I understand that I have a high risk tolerance, and as such, like this is the gamble that I need to take at whatever level I'm at, that being 1K a month, 10K, 100K, or a million. And like that's just the decision that you have to make to be able to succeed.
You have a cool video on your YouTube about internal motivation
Yeah.
and rewiring your brain.
Yeah.
Within that video, you say that the key is to align your life with your natural strengths and passions. So you said earlier you don't know like what your passion is per
Yeah.
se, but like how did it look like for you to be able to align yourself at least to get to the point where you're at today?
Yeah, I don't know, and just to clarify, I don't know what my passion is in the workspace, in the sense of I don't know if my passion is having a watch business. I don't know if my passion is having a football business or whatever that is, right? I know that my passion is entrepreneurship, and that's the decision that I chose to take, right? And just being passionate about the game and striving for becoming a better individual and a better professional. That's kind of the motivation behind it. It was not necessarily playing to any passion. I think that the alignment needs to lie with that, right? Just understanding what is it that you're striving for, what is the outcome that you're going for, that doesn't need to be financial, and then making the right decision to put yourself in a position to do so. And that's being equipped with the right vehicle as well, as we spoke.
How would you say someone can go about kind of looking for and finding their own strengths and passions that they can leverage?
I would say first you need to find the vehicle, right? You need to understand what is it that I'm trying to get to. Why am I unsatisfied with the position that I'm at the moment, and how do I qualify satisfaction? And then off of that is just understanding what is the right vehicle that takes me there. And that if you look back at my story, I took the wrong decision at the time, which was the right vehicle is the vehicle in which I'll set my head down for 10 years. I'm not going to see much money out of it, but in 10 years I'm going to sell this business and I'm going to make a whole lot of money. But then I figured that's not what I want now. I want to have a cash flow business that is allowing me to generate revenue that I then will have more leverage to put into the business that I want to set up, and that is my passion project. And so that's why that came and how that came about, and the reason behind it. So in terms of how to get started, if you're looking for something, is just understanding, okay, what is the vehicle that will allow me to get there? How can I provide something that is unique? And obviously there's always a way to orchestrate the story around it, because something that I get asked a lot, and as part of this work that we do on the coaching side, is I have no experience raising capital. I have no experience working in any of these industries that you're suggesting, but still that is your advantage at the end of the day, because you have experience elsewhere that parlays into this, right? I had never raised funds before besides my own startup. Why was I capable of coming into this business and being successful? It's because of that marketing expertise, even if it's in a completely different industry. So that's how you go about getting started as well.
You mentioned earlier self-awareness,
Yeah.
right? And that's something that, I mean, I think is very clear that you have, something that I've been able to foster over the years as well,
Yeah.
being kind of like aware of why you think the way you think, why you act the way you act, why you respond to things the way you do. Would you say that you've had to be intentional about cultivating that over time to be able to get to where you are, or it was something that kind of came naturally to you?
No, I think you grow with it, or this grows in you, for a want of a better word. That that sense of understanding what it is that you have to do, and w- what takes you to a certain extent, and what things you like and what things you don't like, and how do you want to build a culture around your business and around yourself. When it's all said and done, what is it that you did, and who is it the person that you become? That's the question that you should ask. And as I've said before, I don't think it's about the outcome. I think it's more about the journey. And now looking back and realizing even if I had made 0 or 10 or whatever that is, like it's not about that. It's about the person I became through the process of getting there. That's the beauty of it, and you become a completely different person. And this, coming to London is also something that allows me to understand like how far I've come in that sense, not from a financial perspective once again, but from a development perspective, because I get to reconnect with people I was in university with, and now see what they're doing and just see that I took a completely different route. I've become a different person, and to a certain extent, they've stayed somewhat the same because that's just a normal the social norm and the kind of construct that we're inserted in. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, because they never
yeah,
removed themselves from the environment, so the
no,
trajectory just remained
yeah, it
consistent to what
remains
it
the
was,
same, and
right?
unfortunately, that's what you know how the social construct plays into it to a certain extent, right? And you have probably very traditional parents, I assume, very similar to mine as well, in which the idea and definition of success is you go to a good university, you finish, you do your masters, even though there's probably no point of doing a masters before working. You then start working in a nice job, you then get a girlfriend, you work for 3 4 years, you buy a house together, and that's it, right? And that's what's seen as success, and that's why I think a lot of people fall into that trap, and then you're always living to satisfy someone else's expectations, and even maybe your own expectations, which are not true to yourself because you have not been able to tap into that. So I think there's a lot of self-development that comes from it, and understanding that I am here and I am the only person that's in control of my life. I need to strive for what I think is right, and I need to make the decisions that I think will maximize the chance of doing so. And that's a decision that only you can take, and that only you know what that is. No one else.
Oh, beautifully put,
Yeah,
captain of your ship.
captain of your ship, indeed.
And I've heard you speak about visualization as
Yeah,
well. So, I mean, whether it's techniques or mindset, whatever it is that you personally applied that kind of helped you along your path of
yeah.
development.
I think manifestation, and a lot of people get this wrong, is not sitting down and thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna make 1 million this year," and like just, "Oh, I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna make it," and then you make it. It's just understanding, even if it's financial, right? I want to be the person that makes this amount of money. Manifestation allows the transformation to happen before the outcome arrives, and it's just understanding, okay, for me to get to that position, I need to become the person that is worthy of that. And as such, you once you become that person, that result materializes. And I think that's what manifestation is about, is just understanding I need to become that person to get to that goal, and once that happens, it's just inevitable. And like it's in I think you're an entrepreneur, so it's easier to explain than to other people. Like, you know this, like if you believe in something, to a certain extent you believe in it so much that it becomes true. Like, you know for a fact that this that you're doing now will become successful, and at the moment you have maybe 100 subscribers on YouTube, but you know, and deep down you know, like there is no chance that this will not work out, and it will work out. But then people will look back and say, oh, he was lucky, right? And how did he know? I mean, you just know. And then, yeah, because you're putting the right steps in place, you're taking the right actions, that when you look back in 10 years, although only maybe in 2 years you'll become extremely successful, during that first year you were working towards it, and you knew that that would come. And what you have now doesn't kind of describe you as a person.
For sure, and allows you to be, or allow yourself to be before you can become, to really embody it and
Yeah.
yeah, allow yourself to step into it. Whether it was after working at Vanguard, you just described now the
Mm.
period where you had rent to pay, you didn't really know
Yeah.
where to go, or whether it's back at your parents' house and you're kind of making stuff work for yourself, it's evident you definitely had some low periods during that time
For sure. Yeah.
emotionally. Would you be able to reflect on any of the things that helped you get through those low periods, or at least what you remember them as now that you're through them?
Yeah. And I think the worst moments in my life served as a catalyst to get to the best moments in my life. And I think most catalysts that you have are negative ones. Like, negativity drives change at the end of the day. And the best example that I can give you was exactly during that transition period where I had, I just felt like a bad energy around me, right? As I said, had gone through a breakup, had kind of lost my job slash quit, didn't know how to pay rent, was faced with having to go back, and like all of this just provides you with that catalyst to have to do something out of nothing, and knowing like I have all of this negative energy. I have two options. I can keep going down this dark path, which is probably not going to end up well, or I can use all of this to put me in a position in which I have to succeed. And then you use all of that energy and you funnel it into something that is going to work out. So that's always been my motto with everything that I do. And back to the point that I was mentioning before, and having that conversation with my friend yesterday, if you do not have that catalyst, and if you do not have that motivation, you will never be able to do anything, because you're just too comfortable with the position that you're in. And same in business. There's some people that say, oh, I want to get 10K a month, and then you get there and you become complacent because you've gotten to the goal that you've set out to achieve, because that goal was financially driven. And once you're there, what is left to do, right? And I think it's just being able to figure that out. And at every single stage of business, your problems change and the nature of the problems change. The size also changes, but that's what keeps you going forward. You never get to a position in which you're like, yeah, now everything is perfect. Like, this is exactly how I wanted it. And if you get to that position, then you're in serious trouble.
And you evolve as an individual to be able to deal with those problems as they come as well, no?
Yeah, and having a high tolerance to stress is probably one of the most important characteristics that you need to have as an entrepreneur.
I mean, even based on that, what would you say are, whether it's the traits or the mindset or the things that you would credit the most to your success early on? Because, I mean, let's put it into context, man. You're 24, turning 25 this year. To have done what you've done is a 0.00 however many % of the population that have done it. So when you look back and you think like about yourself through the years and what allowed you to get to where you are there like a couple things that you could point to and be like, yeah, these are the core drivers that allowed me to get here?
Yeah. First one is obviously just the reps, like outperforming everyone and putting in more time than all of your competition would. As I said, like in the beginning, and I've coached a lot of people, so I can also see what they go through and kind of how their mind works. Most people, they just do not have the ability to sacrifice the right things. Like, they don't understand, like, for example, appointment setting is probably one of the first things that you need to figure out in business, like sending messages. How many people do you think would sit on a computer for 2 or 3 hours and just send LinkedIn DMs? Like, I remember perfectly, and I hated it. Like, I completely hated it every day, and I would still sit down and I would work, like, let's say I would take a block from 7 to 11 p.m. at night to just DM people and try to get conversations going. It's like doing what no one else is willing to do. That's one of them. Another one is just having a high tolerance to risk and a high tolerance to stress as well. To know that you'll be in very uncomfortable positions and you cannot break or fold. Otherwise, you're just going to get absolutely eaten and demolished. That's probably one of the most important ones. And then the last one is not jeopardizing things that are essential in your life. So still being able to find time to hang out with your friends, still be able to spend time with your family, probably one of the most important things, because it's not all about money and it's not about yourself only. It's about the people that you surround yourself with, and health as well, like being able to eat right, being able to go to the gym. Because I've had a lot of periods with a lot of work, and for example, I stopped going to the gym for 1 week. You just get into this nebula and you get into this cycle of, you start feeling overwhelmed because there is no break but in your life, and there's not something that allows you to step back, pause, and think, okay, like life is not only about this at the end of the day. And I think a lot of our obsessive nature as an entrepreneur is just to sit down, I just do this, the more that I do it, the better. But ultimately, you also need a time to gain that awareness, gain that visibility, understand what's wrong, understand what's right, and sometimes working less is working more. Then I've had friends which have been in the entrepreneurship space and that I don't speak to anymore because they've completely decided to cut off any relationships that they have and just focus on the business. And that's probably the wrong decision. And most times it has proven to be the wrong decision at the end of the day.
But ultimately, it's their decision to make, right?
Oh yeah, ultimately it's their decision to make, and I don't judge anyone. And I think I've also grown to be the person that I'm aware of the decisions that I make. I'm aware of why I make them, and I'm also able to respect what other people do and why they do it, even if I don't agree with the decision. And in the last 4 or 5 years that I've been in entrepreneurship, my circle of close friends and acquaintances has probably reduced by 99%. And it's something that I'm not sad about. It's something that I'm not dissatisfied with. It's something that I just accept, and I don't allow that to trigger any sort of reaction on my side, or if I try to remain somewhat distant from all of that, and don't let other people affect how I behave and what I think.
What kind of friends do you like to keep in your corner, or people in general?
Yeah, I think you have different kinds of relationships, and I think from each friend you derive something different. So, for example, I can give you the example of Bruno, which is a common acquaintance of ours, right? Bruno is the kind of guy which I can talk business with. He's also the kind of guy that I can do other stuff and take my mind off of business. I probably have other friends that I go to that have nothing to do with business, that I get something different from that relationship, right? When I don't want to think about business, when I just want to fuck around or do something different, I probably go to those people. Then I have other friends that are more focused on sports or something, and I go to them and we can chat about football and all that sort of stuff. So I think you derive different things from different relationships, and you need to understand that they serve their own purpose. Not everyone needs to be a sounding board for the problems that you're having in business or the problems that you're having with your relationship. Like, and they've all been shaped differently. And business wise or not, they allow to further your development the same way that you allow to further their own development. And that, I think that's the beauty of kind of understanding how society works and the relationships that you foster.
100%. Yeah, not everyone's gonna be a to Z friend.
Yeah,
Right.
and most likely they won't be, and that's not the kind of relationships you should strive for either. Yeah.
For sure. But yeah, man, I mean, to start wrapping up, I think it's amazing where you've already taken Avalanche, and I'm
Mm.
sure you're going to be able to take it much further up. And equally, like, the only thing I could tell you and give you advice on is keep going with the YouTube, because I think
Yeah.
the way that you're going and the type of content you post and the message you generally have is something that could not only add a dimension to your business, which I'm sure is something you've thought
Mhm.
about with what you're doing there, but genuinely impact a lot of people and have a positive message to the world.
But it's tough, because content, to a certain extent, you see that the content that works now is the content that's flashy, and it's the wrong kind of content, unfortunately. But it's the content that gets attention. And at the end of the day, I'm looking more at content as an output of what I do and the person that I am, and more as just kind of having that recorded for my future self to look back on, than to be able to generate any sort of return from it. And probably through your podcast is the same thing. You just want to put the right message out there, and you want to stay truthful to yourself. Like, I do not care at all if my video gets 2,000 views, 20,000, or 2 million. Obviously, I'd be happy if I get 2 million views in a video, but that's not what I do it for at the end of the day. And I think that, unfortunately, a lot of the content, and this is a wider problem more with society and success and entrepreneurship, especially in the online spaces. Oh, I've gone out and I've spent 100K this week in Marbella, and I've rented this car, and I've just bought this watch, and I've just done this, and I've just done that. This so materialistic, and it fosters the wrong kind of viewer, and it creates the wrong kind of impact in society, because people will then think that that's what success looks like, and that's what you want, and that's what you want to get to be able to record those videos. No, absolutely not. Just want to have your own message and drive change. And ultimately, if you, once again, if you go against the trend, and if you do something that's unique, sooner or later, you'll be able to succeed with that, because people value that uniqueness.
Exactly that. And I think it's something that with the approach you're taking, maybe it won't take off immediately. Maybe
Yeah.
it'll take twice as long as you would have if you clickbaited and you
Yeah.
added all these things. But in the end of the day, in the long run, you're going to see a lot more success from that
Agreed.
than
And
you
the
would
audience that you
otherwise.
cultivate is also much different and is closer to you.
Yeah, that's true to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
100%. So yeah, man, I mean, big shout out to Bruno as well, who's our
Indeed.
mutual friend who made this possible. And, I'm sure I'll have him at some point
You should.
down the line as well. But couple questions I like to ask
Mm.
before finishing off. So first one, if you could speak to a past version of yourself who was going through a tough time,
Hmm.
whatever that version was, you don't have to specify which one, what message would you give to them?
That as long as you have faith in God and you have faith in yourself, that everything will end up fine. And whatever position you're in and whatever cross you have to carry, things will always be fine, and they will always work themselves out. And this is regardless of you being religious or not. Like, if you have been given this task and you have this obstacle, is because you are capable of overcoming it. And it's understanding that being able to overcome that is what makes you a better person, and ultimately a person that develops and grows into being someone that's deeper, essentially. So that's what I would say. And probably the future self would say the same to me as well.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And any last message, anecdote, story you want to leave the viewer with?
Any last minute stories I would want to leave the viewer with? I guess not necessarily, more just an ending note. I think this is very different from probably the other podcasts that you have done, in the sense of the topics that were approached. If you see, this is not the kind of podcast that people will look for in terms of the numbers that I make or what I do or tips and tricks to be successful per se. I think it's much deeper than that, but it's also the culture that I want to foster, and it's also the impact that I want to have. And ultimately, regardless of the position that you're in or the obstacles that you're going through, you'll always be able to succeed. You just need to take that first step, find the right vehicle, and God willing, you'll be able to find a way to figure it out.
Oh, beautifully put, man. And yeah, I think, one takeaway that I got from
Yeah.
you, especially as I was doing research, is just this importance of alignment with your strengths, right? And, both you and the last guest I had on, Denzel, essentially found ways where you're able to position yourselves in the flow of money, in a space where money is, and you were able to create value there and capture some for yourself. And both of you guys have been able to approach it in different ways, but this brokering middleman business model is something that worked out for both of you. And even more than that, the conversation that I had with both of you had very little to do with money and had very
Yeah.
little to do with this is how much I make, this is who I am because of that. And in the end of the day, that's a reflection of the type of person that you were able to become through going through the process to get to where you are.
Yeah, and making money is a science at the end of the day. You get paid according to the value that you provide. And the more value you provide, the higher the reward will be for the work that you do. It's as simple as that. And it's just being able to understand that. And once again, we're hitting the same thing again, but being able to find the right vehicle that's going to be able to get you there. That's what it's all about. And then just being the right person to command the ship and to be able to sail it to whatever you want to get to.
Amazingly put. Yeah, and God willing, once I get the studio set up and once I grow this bad boy a little more,
We'll do V2.
run it up for round 2.
Let's do it.
Amazing, man.
Amazing. Perfect.
But with that being said, if you want to check out the other episode I did with Denzel, where we went through his story and how he came from a low income background to become a millionaire by 23 working in property, you can check out that episode right here.